Hey there, this is Zach. I wanted to share a moment that happened last night. I'm going to try to make it on the shorter side, but I recognize this is probably just a little bit too much for a 90-second clip that I typically share on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. So I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper. Honestly, I'm also afraid of trying to make this into 90 seconds and really getting some shade thrown my way. I'll probably allude to it in a reel or a TikTok, but I'm not likely going to. Well, who knows? I'll probably try. But without further ado, so this is something that I feel pretty shameful about. I wanted to give it a full context. I didn't want clips of it necessarily made. I actually told Alyssa last night. I was like, I don't know if I can make a video or a reel about this, and she's like, I think having people hear this entire experience would be really valuable. By the way, I am driving right now. It's just like one of those hot thoughts I needed to get off me. I was gonna dive into my audiobook, and I just thought this is something that if I don't deliver on it very soon, it will go away. So I apologize for some of the car background noises, but I'm treating this almost just like a phone call. So it was a multi-hour experience, but Alyssa did some really wonderful emotional labor for me, and I just wanted to share some gratitude as well as shed some light on a pretty shameful spot for me last night. So a little bit of background. This week has been interesting. Alyssa is rarely ever in the office. She was in the office for 2 days this week. I did a decent amount of juggling throughout the week to manage my work and entrepreneurial responsibilities, especially given that on Monday and Thursday the new men's cohorts kicked off. And I really loved how they started, and I'm looking forward to delivering a lot for those two groups. At the same time, it was a decent amount of pressure. It was the first time that I had two kicking off and 9 total participants. Definitely scary ego death for me. But just like good amount of pressure on that one, and both Everly and Alyssa were both kind of sick. There's COVID going around at daycare. Friday is typically when either my mother-in-law comes over and takes care of our toddler, or my parents come over. And this week was my mother-in-law. And let's see. So typically the way they go is one of our parents will come over for about 10:30, 11, and we'll typically leave between 5 and 6. Now, I'm realizing almost a little entitled to it over time as I've gotten so used to having till about 5:30, 6 o'clock on Fridays that I kind of expect it. And so it seemed like a typical day. Communicated with Alyssa ahead of time. I was like, I don't have any meetings till 11:30. So, and she had some stuff she needed to really take care of for her work. I think a lot of her stuff is time sensitive versus my stuff has to get done. I can do a lot of it outside of like work hours sometimes, besides like customer meetings that are on a certain time. So we communicated at the beginning of the day. Towards the end of the day, I think we both kind of went into, okay, well, let's see, mother-in-law will be leaving around 5, and at some point it came out that she was going to be leaving closer to 4:30. And so here's like that miscommunication part that I think Alyssa did a really wonderful job breaking down for me. So I'm going to share with you like kind of the story as it goes, and then we're going to come back and share some of the missed context that created the issue, and that I think we did a good job like reflecting on. So it's about 4 o'clock. I step out. I got a meeting that's coming up in like a couple minutes, and my mother-in-law says like, hey, I'm going to be heading out at 4:30 today. I just wanted to check in about that, etc. And so I'm popped out of my little office there for a minute, and I say, okay, I have a meeting. Should go for another 20 minutes or so. But I should be out here at 4:30 at least to like take over. Now, my first thought in my head is, all right, I'm imagining Alyssa could take over here. And oh no, this is at 3:30. Sorry, so it was about an hour ahead of the time that she was likely to leave, as well as I had 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock set aside to work on entrepreneurial activities. I work with Growth University. They're helping me figure out how to do email marketing, and so they help us out by having like a dedicated hour where we're pretty much just all on the computer on a Zoom call, not talking, but like kind of working in solidarity with each other. Because I know it's really easy to get distracted. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and part of the reason I shared the context of earlier in the week is I haven't had as much time as I've wanted to dive into these. I've been committing. I'm paying a good amount of money for being part of this course, and I've not probably put in the 12 hours this week that I really wanted to throughout the week. So this was an important hour for me with some of the context of that. So we get up to the time where she's about to leave, and I'm talking with Lynn on the couch. I'm talking with so Alyssa's upstairs, and at some point I'm kind of talking with my mother-in-law, and Alyssa can't tell if I'm talking to her or not. We're not looking at each other. There's like we have an open living room where like I don't know how to describe, but like there's like a balcony where she was kind of talking over, but I was under her. And so she was like, hey, like I have some things to deal with right now. And there's this part of me that's thinking like, okay, I don't not have things to deal with. And like I can be flexible, like I can either try to multitask or just not manage things. Our toddler had just fallen asleep for a nap. This is like 3:45, which is super not optimal. At that point, we think to ourselves, if she hasn't slept by now, she probably shouldn't sleep. But she just fallen asleep, and so the thought was, okay, I think so. We'll have to wake her up at 4:30. I think it was actually 4 o'clock that she needed to leave. So the question was, okay, who's managing nap time? Who's waking her up? I'm probably getting, I don't know, maybe a little bit cranky. I'm definitely a little sleep deprived from the week. And we have another contextual piece is we got pizza on. It was Thursday when Alyssa was just feeling a little tapped out from being in the office throughout the week. And I'm not a big fan of when we get pizza. She typically gets it when I go into the office. I was not in the office this week. It's usually like, the Papa Gino's one's kind of expensive, and I don't love it. I'm a bit more tight on her finances than she is, I think. And so it's like, I'm like, I can't even be mad because I'm like kind of glad there's pizza. So Friday we have about 4 or 5 slices left, and so I think I ate one like around noon, and then typically I'll make sure to not eat the last slice. And it's a little foreshadowing. Let's see if you can predict what's about to happen soon. So I've taken on the reins. I'm a little annoyed that Alyssa has. She just said like, hey, like I have stuff to do, and we didn't actually communicate about it. She just kind of said it out loud, and I had to talk to Lynn about something else. And so me and Alyssa didn't communicate about it. There's no okay, what do you got? Okay, what do I got? Okay, that's fine, I got this. It was just her saying what she wanted / needed for her work, and there's no real communication about it. So from there, sitting there a little annoyed. Okay, so I gotta wake her up at 4:30 so that we don't have an insanely terrible nighttime experience here. We gotta give her just one sleep cycle, and I'll have to make sure to wake her up tight at 4:30. At about 4:25 or so, she calls down and says, "Hey, can you put the goats to sleep before she wakes up?" Now, the goats typically, we typically have Alyssa's accountable for the goats. So it was her choice. We talked about that when we got the goats, is that they're her responsibility, and she can delegate. We've taught me everything that I need to know so that things can be delegated to me, and I'm typically pretty like fine about it. I don't love it, but like I get it. I'm also typically not too annoyed about it. And I think the fact that there had been no communication about like how we wanted to do it, and probably this is like one of those experiences where I had a short experience of being a default parent. Um, Maybe I don't know if I could call it that, but I had this experience of like being the default and her just saying, "Well, I need this time," and so I was annoyed to start, and then as that time came and she yelled down to me, a couple minutes before I knew I need to wake her up, and just as I had probably hit a tiny bit of a stride doing something that I was working on for that hour for my business, um, I found myself where now 20 minutes into that experience, and I've accomplished almost nothing besides heat up a slice of pizza for myself. And so we're down to one last slice. Typically, I am good about, especially because it's Papagino's, that's her favorite. And I had this super moment of childishness, and this is really what I'm ashamed about, is it was conscious. It was not me being careless. It was mean, and I was upset with the lack of communication and the kind of just forcing me, one, to not be able to do the things I want, and what I had sort of committed to. The lack of communication. I'm realizing how much I'm trying to justify this right now because I feel so uncomfortable sharing about it. But I'm just going to let it go and just kind of share what happened. So at that moment, I went in and I grabbed the last slice of pizza, heated it up, and I ate it on the way to go take care of the goats. Yes, that was my car. So definitely a moment of like, wow, I'm doing this, just like being spiteful, being upset, being childish. And I think in the moment I was thinking to myself, I deserve this. I'm sacrificing time for a business that we had agreed upon, or that was like on my calendar, because I try to block off time on my calendar. I had blocked off 3 hours that morning. And really, again, because there was just no communication, was the reason I all of a sudden had this sort of entitlement about it. And so walked away, did the goats, came back, woke up Everett, our toddler. I guess we're this far in. I've already said her name a couple times. I'm trying to get used to just saying our toddler instead of saying her name, at least for the short form pieces. So at this point, sitting on the couch there, trying to like slowly wake her up because we're gonna have a really bad night. And probably 5 o'clock rolls around and Alyssa comes downstairs, and it's at that point I'm like, wow, all right, that whole hour I got nothing done in terms of what I'd wanted to. Still pretty annoyed. And then Alyssa comes down and looks and sees the pizza box, sees that it's empty. She's like, did you eat all the pizza? And I said, yeah, I did. And it wasn't until I think I've complained about something. I think it was her bear. She wanted it. She was still kind of groggy coming off her 45-minute nap. And Alyssa said, I got it. And I went to go up to get it. And like, I saw, okay, all right, she's annoyed with me. And immediately we probably went into what's typically like an old pattern that we go into. She's annoyed with me. I'm annoyed with her. She's probably a little bit more aggressive. I hold back a little bit. I withdraw a little bit. And so we're in this like crappy pattern that we're typically in. And then from there, it's probably another 15, 20 minutes pass by. And what I'm really proud of her for doing was she acknowledged that her annoyance came from whenever she sees and hears people being entitled, that's a trigger for her. So she had this experience of me being entitled about it, and she was able to pause, acknowledge it, put it aside, and she came back and sat like on the chair near me and said, hey, like, kind of like, what's up with that? Like, did you do that on purpose? And she's like, normally I know that you like leave the last piece of pizza for me, especially if it's Papa Gino's versus like when it's Domino's. That's my favorite. She doesn't care as much. Um, and she just gave me this really. She did some really amazing emotional labor to give me the space to like reflect on what the issue was, why I was feeling that way, and what the trigger was that caused it. And I ended up going down a couple different paths of me trying to articulate it. Kind of struggled, but kind of came to the fact that if in that moment when she had said, "I need this time," if we'd been looking at each other, if I had had a chance to say, "Okay, I'll do it," and like I had chosen between the two of us, and I had said, "Yeah, like I can do that," versus me just being forced to do it via her not coming downstairs, I know it would have been a totally different experience. And but I mean, what's really embarrassing for me and like shameful is like the fact that I had such a consciously childish, mean moment of eating the last piece of pizza. And I know it's small because it's a piece of pizza, but it's also big because of the lashing outness of it, the childishness of it. And I think what there is to take away really that we discovered, one was, if I'm being titled, she's probably going to get triggered. We don't have great language for dealing with that in the moment besides our own personal reflection. I'm really grateful and proud of her for acknowledging that, because she hasn't it usually takes a while, and I think it probably took 20-30 minutes for her to notice that for herself and like kind of get off it about that. It took me longer to get off of it and to like put that aside. And it wasn't until she came to me and was like talking to me about what she was experiencing in that moment that really made it easier for us, was the fact that she was doing the emotional labor on it. So trying to think of what to sort of share now. So the again, I think communication about expectations, the difference between choosing versus being told how it's going to be, and not really even having an opportunity to say, "Yeah, I got this," is a totally different experience than just being told, "Hey, I need to do this. Whatever's on your mind, I don't care." And that was the experience I was left with, even though like we reflected and that was not actually what she was doing. It was that she got confused because I was talking with my mother-in-law, her mom, and she was like, "Okay, well, I want to stay on my thought train," and then she just kind of jumped back into the work that she had been doing, rather than pausing to have a quick conversation about like how to handle the next 2 hours. Um, and this has happened before, I think. It's sometimes even in reverse, where it's like just the communication of how things are gonna go um, aren't fully spelled out, and so we get entitled to having previous knowledge about how it's gonna go, um, which that's, I think, a huge breeding of resentment and entitlement. I think I've said everything I need to say. Honestly, it doesn't feel as shameful saying it out loud, and I know Brene Brown would say that whenever we put a spotlight on shame so we can see it, it tends to shrink a bit. So I still feel kind of gross about how I acted yesterday. I'm also grateful that Alyssa pointed out to me that would probably be valuable for me to share out loud, and the kind of dynamics that we experience to share with people. Hope this is valuable. And yeah, feel free to DM me if you have any thoughts or things that you want to share that brought up. This is some of the work that we do in the men's groups that I do. The men's mental mastery is having these conversations, looking at our triggers. I'm not a therapist. We go into some mindfulness moments where we're identifying triggers, but I'm not there to validate you as much as I am to hold you accountable to being the guy that you want to be. And I really just do work with guys right now. Unless someone wants to be a couple and wants to throw a lot of money my way, I'm not willing to change or update my programming, because I really like working directly with guys. Let's keep this to 20 minutes. Thank you for listening. I hope this made a difference. Feel free to share it or share feedback via DM and Instagram. Thanks.